Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. And really want to explore some really fun things. So let's get started. So yeah, my name is Tom Strnad. I'm the lead digital artist of the Creator Space, and today's workshop is video editing, storytelling with color grading. So we're going to look at how we can use color grading as another element of storytelling, and how that and how that can be used differently. So we've looked at color grading in the past, and the basics of it, and what it can do. And now we want to look at it in another light. So this is those kind of creative concepts and ideas, and we're going to have some fun and look at how we can take the same footage and manipulate it and make different outcomes with it, and how that can work. So yeah, let's start this up. So want to thank all our partners in this project for making this happen. We have the Canada Council for the Arts, and then we have our library partners, the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. Please do check out. There's some of the technology that's available. Also, computers will be available once libraries are open again. So do check that out. There's iMacs that are designed for video editing and loaded with the software we're using today, which is the DaVinci Resolve software. It's the studio software that we're using. So do check that out. And I want to mention too that we will have a Q&A after. So there's an Ask a Question tab at the bottom here on the Crowdcast session. So you can just ask questions as we go along, and I'll get to them at the end. Also, you can rewatch this right here through Crowdcast, and we also post the videos on our YouTube channel. So do check out more webinars and links to other videos at our website, tbmcs.ca. Okay, so let's get right into this. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Storytelling with color grading, introduction, what does that mean? And just, that kind of concept. It's a little bit different. Again, like generally we're looking at just how to fix things or how to balance things. And now we're going to look at kind of going the other direction, where we're manipulating things to make them, fake, moody, and enhance the story, change the story, and maybe totally change what was intended from the beginning. So that's the real fun part of color grading. What we're using today, we'll just quickly talk about the software, color grading, tone and mood, some of the adjustments, and going on from there. So let's continue through here. So storytelling with color grading. So here's kind of the overall idea of what we're going to look at today. So generally, color grading and color processing footage has a goal of creating an authentic or natural look. So matching different cameras, different times of day, especially for a documentary or narrative film, that could already take a lot of work. And that's the general goal a lot of the times, is just how do we match things? There's different shots, maybe things are shot different days, different months, different seasons. Maybe it's shot over 2 or 3 years. So there could be a big goal of just unifying everything. And that's a common goal, unifying through color grading, balancing things out, natural skin tones, and that kind of authentic color, tone, and base and unification of the entire project is what is at the essence of most color grading. But what we want to do is take it to another area and look at it as a creative tool. So it can be also used as a method to help better tell our stories in film and video. It can be used to change that authentic and original footage to create a mood. It can be used to create a look, a feel, a season. It could be a different season. We can make what seems like a summery day look more wintry. And as a result, we can, color grading can create a story directly. And that's really at the core of what we're going to look at today, is how we can, look at creating a story with color grading directly. Okay, so the software, I always just like to go over what we're using. So we're using the Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve software. This is there's a free version available. So it's nonlinear editing software. It's available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. And what's great about it is because it is free, but it's really, the color grading tool is one of the best ones for video out there. It's used by most Hollywood films, and it what you learn on it is great, because even if you go to other software like Adobe Premiere, Avid Media Composer, any kind of software where you're dealing with editing and some color grading and anything like that with nonlinear, it's all really the same. So we have the same concept. So if you learn in Resolve, you're learning on one of the best color grading systems that's available. And in this particular workshop, we're going to be featuring DaVinci Resolve 17, and it's the Studio beta version. So there's some, it's always getting improved. So, bear with me if there's a few glitches or anything, but it's pretty good so far as I've been testing it. So again, this is a studio version. The studio versions we have available in the libraries and on the iMacs. The free version just takes a few things away, such as going beyond 4K footage. So you can, in the studio, you can go more, higher resolutions, and then you get some more effects and some more sound options and things. But generally, you can do pretty much everything. I'd say 90% of the same stuff. So the studio version often comes free with the cameras that you buy from Blackmagic. So there's ways to get it in that way without spending a lot of money, but it is about $400 if you do want to buy the studio version. It's a forever, one-time, in perpetuity fee, so it's still a lot cheaper than doing monthly, software rentals from other companies. So yeah, so it's definitely great. So that's what we're going to be using today for the demoing. So what is color grading for video? And we talked about this in some of the past workshops, and again, I encourage you to check them out. So it's similar to post-processing. So if you're familiar with photography and using software like Lightroom, Photoshop, it's that whole post-processing idea of taking images and manipulating them. So with color grading, we're able to adjust, color balance, saturation, contrast, brightness, and quality of the color of the video. So really it gives us the tools to reshape the entire image. We can decide how much color there is, how little color there is, how bright, how dark, what shifting color balances. We can make things warmer, we can make things cooler. We can make certain areas warmer, cooler, and things like this. So there's a lot of fun aspects of what can be done with it. So very robust post-processing we can do with it. So tone and mood. So, we got to think about these ideas, what tone and mood and color and what we associate them with. So, different colors can alter the tone and mood. So, cool colors make things a little more ominous and scary. Warm makes things more comforting and cozy. Then a big thing here too, saturation, or the amount of color, can also affect the story. So generally, if there's more color saturation, it could be somewhat comforting. We can see that more in family, kind of skewed films, children's television, very colorful. And then taking out color, making it more stark, can make it nostalgic. It can also make it a little bit scary looking too. So, a lot of different options of what it can do. So just a little bit on the color science. So video uses red, green, and blue, and those colors make up all the other types of colors. So you can see here this color wheel. This is the video color wheel. It's a little bit different than painting and things. So it's the combinations of red, green, and blue, and then we have cyan, magenta, yellow. And the idea here is in color grading is that essentially if I move towards away, if something looks too red, I just move away from red to fix it. Now that's when we're trying to make things natural or normalize or try to kind of get an overall authentic look to it. But now in the creative process, we can say, you know what? I want this to feel really warm and hot like a summer day. So I'm going to add more warmth. I'm going to push it to red and yellow. So it could be the opposite. So if your image is very cool looking, let's say we shot it now in the winter, and you want it to look warmer, you can push it the other way. So that's the kind of thing. We're going to look at some of the opposites today versus generally we're looking at it like, okay, something looks too green, so we go to magenta. You can see the direct opposite. So that's, what ends up happening between the two ideas, right? So that's the idea there. Okay, so let's explore. Let's get right into some of the, the storytelling with color grading, and how that can work. So we'll just move right into that. So let me just switch over to the Blackmagic software, and I put some shots together to kind of look at. So here's the screen. I just put a few shots together in like an editing timeline. Sound's not really going to be important, and you know, the idea here with, you know, fixing or changing the colors is really what we want to focus on. So we're going to take this footage and look at how we can change it up. Just had a question here. Someone's asking about the actual screen size. So yeah, definitely make sure your browser's all the way open because it will scale. So if anything's getting cut off, just make sure you open up their whole screen or your browser that you're watching this in. Again, if you're having any issues, if anything's cut off, you can rewatch it and, you know, realign that as well. So definitely check that out. Okay, so let's hop right into this. So I'm going to go into the color tab here. Okay, so this is just you know, kind of raw footage, and what we'll do is I'm going to make a couple of copies. So I'm going to just, you know, call cut A, and here what I'm doing is just duplicating some of the timelines, so I can say, okay, there's, you know, cut A, cut B, and, you know, we'll probably do a bunch. So, but let's just start. Let me actually duplicate a couple more. Probably do about 4 different versions we'll work on, which will give us a good variety. So we're going to take the same footage, same timeline, and just look at what we can do with the same footage, and always starting from like the beginning, from our raw point. So I'm going to do cut A. Okay, so here's like our first shot, just in the library, and there's another shot here in the library. Then we have kind of a night shot in the library, and I have a day shot as well. So just to kind of show what we can do with those two. And again, not necessarily that this is making you know, a lot of sense right now, like there isn't audio and stuff, but we just want to look at what kind of mood we can get just by not hearing anything and just by seeing things, and going on there. Tech spec, so right now I'm using DaVinci Resolve Studio, the beta number 17, Resolve 17. I'm using an 8 gig external graphics processing unit, so that can also be in an iMac, usually has that much GPU power. And it's also it's with 32 gigs of RAM is kind of a good base that we want to work with. Now some of the hard drives, I'm using a couple of drives. Ultimately, you know, if you're doing anything kind of above HD, you want to go into solid state drives as well. So bear with me if there's any kind of stutters, because these are just some of my backup drives with some archival footage. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I'm going to swap right into color. So this is a cut A, and we're just going to play with, you know, what do we want this to look like. So I'm going to just play with, let's make this super cool, like it's a, you know, very wintry day. It's winter, I'm kind of feeling wintry. So first I'm going to do is kind of bring the brightness down. So these are those kind of curve areas. Then I crush it down a little bit more. And then what I'm going to do is shift it to blue on the gain side. So really just trying to make it, you know, kind of wintry looking. The gamma, like the overall, you know, so think of the lift, gamma, and gain kind of as like gamma, your midtones, lift, your shadows, dark areas, gain, your highlights more so. And that's a good way to look at these wheels. And, you know, so maybe I'll go a little bit kind of on the green side here. And look, we're already making that, you know, very different than it was before. Right, so that's kind of our before or after, right? So we're making this into kind of a winter scene, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this over and, you know, do the same thing with this scene here. And look how you know, how different that makes it from just like the kind of the raw, the normal, and you know, to go like that. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same for this one here. So you can see all of a sudden I've made it into this kind of, you know, blue wintry look. It looks like I feel cold watching it. Right, so, and I'm just going to make these a little bit shorter just so we can. Okay, and let's get into, we got this kind of night hallway here. See what we can do with this. So then this one's already, you know, kind of nighttime. So same idea, I'm gonna probably make things a little bit darker. So I'm just, you know, kind of playing with the curve there, and we'll make it very kind of that whole wintry thing as well, right? Now, here's kind of the difference of this one was already dark. This one was presented to be as if it's daytime. So again, you can see, those kind of choices there. This one's lit that way, so it's going to be a lot harder to make it nighttime. But this one could potentially match better with our previous shot. So the daytime. So if you're ever faced with a couple of choices, we can do that. But watch, we can also make this one appear a little bit more like the daytime as well. Just doesn't have, it has definitely a lot more shadows to it. So that can always be an issue. So, okay, so that's one idea. So, we basically made this winter scene out of what was a normal scene before. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is, let's go right into B. So same idea, I'm just gonna make these shots a little bit shorter so we can kind of watch through them a little bit faster. Put this one here. Okay, and now I'm going to actually now I'm going to look at making this into like a horror film and making it really dark and moody, and what we can do with that idea. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do right away is I'm going to reduce the saturation. So I'm going to go to about 25, so half of the 50. 50 is basically the full saturation. Okay, and put like a lot of contrast in this. Okay, and again, so pretty low saturation, and very, very different look again. So now I'm going for like a horror film look. Now this is a day scene, but again, I think I'm getting kind of an interesting mood, and you might get different moods from it, but I think we're getting into kind of this, it's very different from the one we just did before. So this is desaturated and, kind of putting it onto the reddish tint, and that's that. Now here, this one's going to come out really nice. Look at that for when I really want to make this into the dark, like horror film thing. So, time passes and we maybe get right into the night. So again, look at the before and afters in the storytelling process. So here we go. Before, kind of the authentic raw shot, and now we're into this. So very different moods. Okay, so now let's go into another one. I'm going to go into C. Again, I'm just going to make these shots a little bit shorter, just trim them down really quickly. And this one I'm going to make really, kind of a bright, kind of the opposite. So we're going to add saturation and make this into kind of a, a romantic comedy. We're going to look at that as our kind of our objective. Right? So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to actually do brightening. So I would like to put a little bit of contrast. This is kind of what's called an S-curve. And now I'm going to do is actually add, go to about 80 saturation. Okay, now it's looking a little bit warm, so I'm just going to take a little bit of the warmth out. And just going to kind of counter a little bit of the contrast. Right, so now we got that very kind of, it's not really normal, but definitely, we're kind of getting into what to me looks like, maybe it is a bit of like the romantic comedy, right? Like super saturated. It's not realism either, right? Like look at how very yellow and warm and how everything is what's happening here with it, right? So, and then here's just if we wanted to do our night with that kind of a look as well. And we can do a little bit more warmth. So look at that. So now we got into this, like what I'm calling a kind of a comedy, super bright, lots of color. Okay, but again, we're not really doing this authentically. We're still really playing with, super saturation. Okay, so that's that one. So we did our winter. It creates kind of one look. And, same shots, totally different looks. Here's kind of our like horror film, uh, somewhat monochromatic, silver looking. Here's our super colorful scene. Okay, and let's do one more. And in this one, we're gonna look at it as do like a film noir. We'll look at it as a black and white piece, and just see what happens if we totally get rid of color and what that takes. So I'm gonna go to all the way to 0. So there we go, no saturation. And now what I want to do is really play with the film noir kind of idea, high contrast, the black and white look. So I'm just going to copy that look over. So kind of the day scene and the night scene is to show how that kind of gets affected in both ways. So let's have a look at this now. What does this do? So here's the black and white kind of film noir. And black and white really gives films a whole different type of look right away. So we went from the super saturated to no saturation at all. Right? And sometimes you go, okay, well that's kind of neat. I like where that's going, but maybe like a little bit of saturation. So I'm just going to copy the black and white cut, and let's have a look now at what happens if we maybe just play with bring a little bit of saturation back. So like 10%, let's say, or not even. I'm going to just do like 5%, and I'm just going to kind of spin it around and see what kind of looks interesting. So you can do this kind of a blue tint to it. You can have this kind of sepia look, right? So if you really want, we can go with like a sepia as well. So it's not drastically different, but it really does play around with it quite differently than just the black and white. This kind of a sepia look. Right, so just kind of another option there too. Okay, so now we're kind of on a roll here. So let's look at, I'm gonna go back to this this one we did here. This is kind of an interesting look, and let's see if we can, we really like, okay, let's make this more into like an action film. What would that look like? What would an action film look like? So like a Jason Bourne or something in that kind of vein. So it's usually kind of a blue-green look. So we're gonna kind of push to make it more like that. And I'm gonna actually put a little bit more contrast. So that's looking pretty neat. Really, it's kind of giving that, kind of action. Again, that's our kind of night action scene. This would be our day action scene, right? And it's really giving that kind of blue-green, right? So that kind of tint there, right? So again, so we go, let's have just a quick look. So we go from here, we're going to this one that was kind of we're saying a bit of a horror film, desaturated. Then we went to C, which was the super saturated, kind of the comedy. We went to complete black and white. Then we went into like a sepia version. And then we went to this kind of action film thing. So again, it's not necessarily that drastic. This is purely like, look how much can just be done with color. And I think that's the real fun part, is playing with, you know, just with color, and you know, what can that do. Now we can also play with things such as, we'll do one more copy here, and you know, trying to emulate you know, different types of film, or different areas like that. And what I like to do there is sometimes you can really play with what's in the shadow area. So if we kind of lift the shadow up a little bit, and you know, we try to give it a little bit of brown in there too, right? Kind of as an alternative here too. And I'm just going to go to the actual shadow area here too. And just kind of seeing what we can do in terms of a little bit of shadow boost. See how it's kind of flattening the things out? So by boosting the shadows, we can really create a different look to it as well. It's kind of you know, starts to feel like maybe we're in like the 70s kind of idea, right? So really interesting what can be done. Okay, and then on a whole other note, we can also say, okay, well, you know, what if we want to make something? Let's take this one. I'm just going to make a copy of that. You know, what if we want it to be a little bit more flat? So we'll take this and we'll say, okay, let's get rid of that kind of contrast idea. And you know, this is, I think, where we start to get into that kind of more normalized look. But you know, what if we want it to be not very contrasty at all? And you know, have like the highlights a little bit brighter, right? So we can really play with it in this kind of manner, where you know, it's a lot flatter, and you know, playing with it like that. So you know, again, an almost normal looking. Then we can also, you know, say, okay, well, what if we brought in the color? And so you can see how by deconstructing it, we can actually also construct it back to how we want it, maybe for you know, the specific story of how we want to tell it. Right, so that's definitely pretty neat. Okay, so that's that on the kind of narrative side. And again, so different moods. So we got, okay, winter. This kind of thriller horror film, all the way back to like the flat. So here is our kind of comedy, super saturated. What a very different look from B to C. You know, it's the same footage, but look what a different story we're telling. Like this looks, you know, the people in the background are laughing. In this one, they're laughing as well, but you're almost, it doesn't really, it kind of disappears. So, and those are the really neat things. The color can help change that whole mood, that, yeah, maybe people are laughing in the background, but it's, you know, we almost don't notice it as much now. Whereas with the color, it really picks it up a lot more. Here's like our action movie. And then we went to this one with the kind of flatter shadows to create a different kind of a film look and go in that manner. So it's really cool. Okay, so now let's look at on the documentary side. And I have some shots here of kind of some documentary footage, and we can just look at, you know, a few ideas there too. What does it mean to play with that look? So I think that, you know, in essence too, what we want to look at is how do we what kind of story are we trying to tell? Referencing different genres or films can be a really great way to approach it too, because if you're not sure what maybe the final look should be, like referencing other films, videos can be a really great starting point to say, okay, you know what, I really liked how this TV series looked like, and I want to make that my story look like that. Now, there's a lot to be said for how things are shot too. But we can do a lot in the color grading to at least create the same kind of mood. Maybe there won't be as much shadow or contrast, or how something was specifically lit or shot. Like even when I was doing the film noir, like very different if there aren't pools of lights and stuff like that. It needs to be shot that way too, a bit more. But we can still emulate feelings and a specific look. So I think that comedy approach where we said, we're going to make this kind of a romantic comedy, lots of saturation, lots of color. I thought that worked really well as a concept of to tell the story, because everything felt really bright and happy, and it was very different than the kind of the darker, moody, desaturated looks, right? So very opposite feeling ideas. Same footage, right? Very different storytelling. I'm not going to feel like this is going to be happy, positive when it's really dark and contrast filled and desaturated, right? So, just to think about that. The other thing that we can play with is we can also play with the, kind of a contrast. There's been some really great comedies that can look really dark and moody. And, that is a play on expectations of what we're then dealing with. But anyway, so let's look at some of the dock area here. So I'm going to start with kind of, one area, and then go right into this, alternate kind of cut. So here's just kind of like our base, like raw footage of the interview as it was done. So again, I'm just gonna, start kind of with this idea of a bit of a S curve. What do I want to do now? Let's play with, again, maybe, more saturation. And then let's think about, there's a lot of warmth, so we're probably going to take a bit out and play with it this way, and we'll make it a bit kind of on the cool greener side with the trees, with the tree kind of in the background there. Okay, so this is kind of a neat look so far, in the kind of documentary. That seems to work nicely. Now we're outside in the winter where it is blue, right? So let's just see. I'm going to just copy and paste this over and kind of see what. So you can see how that is almost the opposite, where we really need to bring in some flesh tone this way. And, I'm going to try to match it a bit so it's that kind of greenish idea. So we're just going a little bit, again, see, it's the opposite because it was so blue. I'm almost going to like yellow to make that work. So this is definitely a one way to make it look. Just going to make this a bit shorter. Okay, and then I have like another interview shot here, and what does that one look like? So I'm just going to try and apply the same kind of look to it. So we've been kind of going a bit on the greener side. Oh, too green now. So maybe like somewhere like that, right? So and this is, it's not really not necessarily natural, but this is just giving me kind of a contrast look for like a documentary film. Okay, so that's the kind of one idea. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this one out to work on this from this version. Okay, so let's have a look now. What does this one look like? If let's play with the desaturation and maybe heavy contrast. right, and we'll go kind of this like kind of magenta style to it, and we'll just, you know, kind of play with what that means and does. Right, again, so very different, you know, feel to the documentary now, right? So we've desaturated and we're putting this kind of magenta tint to it, and you know, very unnatural, but it starts to create a unique look. And you know, I feel like there's some sort of abstraction, maybe hinting to some artistry, or alluding to maybe what the style or the time is. Maybe this is, you know, one section of the film is in the documentary. Maybe this whole section has this kind of magenta look, and it's taking place in the 80s, and we want like this kind of magenta look. And then the next section is going to be a little bit different. So, you know, just playing with these kinds of looks are really neat in the documentary side too. So, you know, the narrative side, we went with, okay, how do we make kind of a horror film look, thriller film? How do we make kind of an action film, the drama film or comedy film with super color and that kind of idea, right? So now we're looking at, you know, how do we play with these kind of tonalities in this kind of idea here? Okay, so now let's go right over here to this one. And so let's just have a look. So I'm going to just start again from scratch here on these. Now what I'm going to do is let's go for like, you know, kind of a super saturated and bright look with contrast. So, you know, this is about a photographer, and this kind of look, I'm feeling kind of inspired. It's almost looking like some sort of like a Kodak, you know, Ektachrome or something, color stock, like super colorful, right? And again, very different from what we did in the other one. And let's just see what it kind of looks like here on another person too. So look at that. So that's like super, you know, colorful and very starts to look like some sort of an older film stock, like Super 8 or something like that. And you know, pretty neat looking. I'm interested in this. Like this has something to it. So again, it really looks like kind of an Ektachrome or some sort of an older film stock potentially that's kind of coming up here, that's arising. So that's kind of neat. I like that. So that's playing with, okay, we want to do that. Now, let's look at, we'll start another one just from scratch. And, you know, again, let's make this a little bit more like, maybe it's like a crime story documentary. And, you know, what can we do with that? So I want to go with real intense contrast. And I'm going to take down the color to about 25, so like half. Okay, and I'm just kind of playing with where things kind of stand. So I'm going pretty dark, and you know, I want to kind of neutralize it a little bit so it's almost silverish. That's what I'm thinking. It's kind of the look of it. So that's looking pretty neat. Right, and really crushing the highlights of the characters, right? And so a very different looking documentary. You know, there's definitely something moody about this. and just putting the character in like this kind of darkness, right? So all of a sudden it looks like, you know, what a different story. Like maybe this is a photographer getting, you know, photos of a crime happening, and you know, here's a police officer talking about it. You know, really a whole different kind of story we can imagine from the same previous concept of working at. So again, what am I doing? S curve, we did a 25 saturation. So, you know, I'm gonna actually boost up the contrast here a little bit more too. And then I'm just kind of, I'm playing with the colors to offset the original warmth that it was filmed in, and getting it a lot darker looking. Okay, so here we go again. So we have, you know, this, the ectochrome look. So the first time we did, you know, kind of almost a natural, just a bit of contrast, playing with what it could be. Here we did kind of this ectochrome look. Here we did our like crime story. And then here we did like this monochromatic shift to kind of a violet to a purple look as well, right? So, but really interesting how we can get, you know, these kinds of tone qualities. Okay, now something that can be done too is not just with color grading, but then we can also work with, you know, shifts in you know, with some effects and things. So let's just look at adding even more stuff to this. So we're going to take this and kind of make an alternate. Now, in the open effects, we have some really interesting effects that we can add. And these can be, you know, kind of stylized concepts that can occur as well. So I'm going to do something that's called film damage. And it lets you kind of preview what it's going to look like. So I'm going to just drop that effect on here. Okay, and now under effects, I can actually play around with what it should look like. So I'm going to, you know, put maybe a lot of dirt, have a big scratch. You know, so that's a pretty cool, you know, look to it already. So I have that kind of magenta, doing a little bit of, so you can see there's dirt and there's that line of scratch there, right? So that can just take it that one next level where we've created this kind of, you know, magenta monochromatic look, and we've also then made, you know, this kind of dirt damage look on it as well. So that's definitely a really fun thing. Now, you know, here's even things like this where we can put in like analog damage. So, you know, it can look like it's an old surveillance, like a video camera. And then I'm going to just look at, you know, what else can we do that can put a little bit of, so we can, you know, put a film grain look. See a little bit of the grain happening. And then you can, there's some presets kind of what it could look like. So right away, just by adding some grain, and that's a really neat one. Let's go back to our B, where it looks kind of like that ectochrome look. Look what happens if we do a film grain. Now I'm going to actually put the reversal, and I can almost feel like it's, you know, this kind of look to it. Lots of grain, so really neat presets that can happen here. So yeah, that really starts to look like that kind of, and you can see the little bit of the grain dancing, and it has that look of Ektachrome. So it's really capturing that. So very, very different looks of what can be achieved. Okay, and let's just do one more here. And again, just start kind of from our base here. And now what I want to do is really play with this kind of silvery look, which I think can be really interesting for the film as well, and as a documentary. So this kind of silvery look is neat because, again, trying to look at a bit of a winter story since it's happening in the winter. You know, and what. So sometimes just that hint of blue can be a really nice touch, where you know we've augmented it and we've again made something. I feel like I'm now. It's a colder story. I don't really have the warmth that I'm looking for in the story of you know. So it has this kind of wintry. It happens in the winter. It makes it very, very clear. And then finally, let's look at just that kind of opposite, if that kind of seasonal things that we can really do. And you know, let's take the winter one, and you know, what happens if we really want to make it into more of a summer story. So I'm just going to take down the saturation a little bit here. Yeah, now I kind of feel like I'm in, you know, in the middle of the summer, and probably just a little bit too much warmth there still, but definitely has a nicer kind of summer look to it. I'm just doing the overall gamma boost there, and leaving some nice warmth to it. And let's see what we can do with the outdoors here. Like, how summery can we make this as well? Yeah, I definitely don't feel like we're in the winter anymore. So it definitely feels at least like it's a bit more of a fall story. So again, just playing with those, you know, complete opposites of you know, where we can take the documentary. So more of a summer story. So again, different mood, different seasons. Yeah, so all the stuff that we're doing here, if anyone has any questions, I can open it up now. And just saw a question here, the studio version. All of these effects, the film grain, that's on the free version as well. And all the color grading that I'm doing is on the regular version as well as in the studio version. So it's accessible to both areas. So it's not really you know, a specialized one or the other, but you get these same open effects filters show up in the free version as well as of where it was before. So if anything's missing, any of these kinds of, some of the effects, not every effect will be in the free version. So if there was something specifically needed, you can always come to the libraries to use the IMAX that have the studio versions loaded as well. So that's a really cool thing. So okay, so let's just kind of go back to what we did in this one. So we went from there to the Ektachrome kind of look. Sorry, I'm going to just switch back over here so we can see it a bit better. So from there to the Ektachrome, we did this dark, like, crime story. We did this magenta with some film grain, or the kind of the violet look. Here we did a real push on the grain, so that's where we really made it look like that. Here we did this the winter version, and then here we did the summer version. So very different looks, same idea. And then again, go back to the narrative. So we did our blue, we did our kind of thriller, we did our comedy, we did our black and white, we did a sepia, we did a Jason Bourne action, and we did a kind of a film nostalgic, maybe 70s looking. And then here we did the kind of bright, not really, it's kind of a bit of a neutral. And that might be a nice way to just tell the story. It's like, okay, we're not really saying what you should feel necessarily, but we're going to let the story say its thing too. So I think that's a really great thing I should mention too, is that at the end of the day, you can still, really decide not to make color grading affect things too much, but you're still doing a decision, because you might say, I'm going to take a little bit of color away and let things be less colorful, and let the story kind of take place, and so on. So yeah, so that's kind of where everything stands. So yeah, definitely want to thank everyone for joining us, and you'll be able to access this through Crowdcast to watch it again. And yeah, thanks again for joining us. I hope you had a good session, and I will see everybody soon. Just going to switch over to our final slides here. And yeah, so again, thanks again. Want to just thank all of our partners that we have on this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and our library partners as well. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Saga Beach Public Library. So it was a pleasure, and I hope to see you guys soon. Take care.